Hello, hello. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. We are here today for show 232. Today is Wednesday, December 21st. We are just a few days before Christmas. And as promised, we're here with a fantastic guest and hopefully an illuminating conversation. And I'm excited for this one. I'm going to check over here with David to see if we are live. Let me check with him now via Slack. I think we're coming in live, but getting a yes. It looks like we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. I was telling Bryan, my guest, that sometimes it feels like we're playing roulette, and it's like, do you hit black or do you hit red? We don't know. And today the internet is behaving. I did want to share with all of you that are tuned in. I do have some brand new, hot off the press, exciting news, and it's relating to my day job at One Firefly, running One Firefly, and I'm actually going to share my screen because One Firefly is now going to be at Lightapalooza 2023. So this event is February 20th through 23rd. It's going to be at the Renaissance Phoenix Glendale Hotel and Spa. It's the second annual Lightapalooza. It's going to be a big deal. So the website is lightapalooza2023.com, and you can go there and check out all of the content. This looks like the resort where the event's going to be held at, and we're super excited. I believe we're working out the finer details, but I believe we're gonna have a booth. We're gonna have some team members there, and yours truly. I'm gonna be leading some education, and we're gonna be helping all of you watching and listening. We're gonna be helping you understand how to better drive this message, this exciting category of lighting, and drive that through your branding and marketing activities, both to your customers and your trade partners, as well as those prospects, the people that are out there maybe building a luxury home, and they're going to need lighting design and beautiful fixtures and control systems. And there's also the whole retrofit side of the business, right? If you think about it, there's far more nice big homes existing than those that are getting built. And if you design the right product mix into those homes, you can provide those customers and clients beautiful solutions that enhance their lifestyle. So definitely worth checking out Lightapalooza. I'll be there. I'll buy you a drink at the bar. Wonder how many are going to take me up on that. And I look forward to seeing all of you there. But let's get back to the show. This is show 232. And my guest is Bryan Mills. He is the president at Mills Technologies. So let's go ahead and bring Bryan in. Bryan, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Ron. Good to see you.
Hey, likewise. Where are you coming to us from?
We are just north of Chicago. So, just first suburb north of Chicago.
Awesome. And I see the festive room. Where are you physically located? Are you in your office?
I am in our conference room, and actually, one of our team members came in a couple weeks ago over the weekend and decorated our office festively, kind of throughout. So it was a nice surprise to walk in. So thought it would add a little bit to the conversation today.
Now, so I'm here in Florida, and generally it's rather warm, although I believe we have a cold snap about to hit us. But you have the cold weather, you have the Christmas decorations, it looks like holiday decorations. Do you also have like the holiday music playing throughout the office through all
We've
those
got it off
beautiful
right now,
speakers?
so it's not so it's not interfering with this. But otherwise, we have had it on. Yes.
Love it. Love it. Now, Bryan, you and I actually have a couple things in common. I thought it'd be fun to maybe start there. And the first is that you are a fellow mechanical engineer. So I went to Virginia Tech. I graduated back in 2000. I'm not sure how, but somehow I got a diploma, and there was a lot of fun and not always a lot of studying happening, but they did let me out of there, and I get to claim I have a mechanical engineering degree. But so do you, and you and I graduated just a couple of years apart. Tell me about that. Just the engine. How did engineering happen for you?
Yeah, I graduated in 2002 from Northwestern University with a degree in mechanical engineering, focus in product design. It was one of those. I think, like a lot of us, we probably played with a lot of Legos as kids, and
For me, it was Capsilla. Did you ever play with Capsilla?
I don't think I played with that as much. I know what that is, but I big Lego sets, which my kids now have. We
Yeah.
actually have a Lego room in our house, but that's another story. Yeah, I think just gravitated towards a little bit more of the math and the engineering or the physics. And I had a number of family members that were engineers, and just kind of got into it. And actually, before I even went to school, got through some nepotism, got the chance to intern at a product design firm, and really just kind of fell in love with product design and the way that they marry form and function. And so that was interesting to me, and decided to study that in school.
That's awesome. Well, I want to get your thoughts around what sort of ideas or principles from your engineering background have led into your belief systems and how you run your business. So I'm putting that out there. I'm going to come back to that. But one other thing you and I have in common, Bryan, is that you also are on the Azione board. So I'm on the Azione board. I've served there for a number of years, and you're there. So maybe just at a high level, what is the Azione board, and what is the role that you serve? You and I both serve on that board.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at Azion, I guess we're all called buying groups, although I think their function has really changed, right? I think
Mhm.
that's one of the big things is certainly we're there to leverage scale in terms of maximizing profitability, but really it's networking, right? I mean, that's why I think a lot of these groups exist, and certainly some of my biggest learnings from the last few years have been through groups like Azion, some of the other business owners I've gotten to meet there. I think our role on the board is really kind of to direct some of those activities. When we have a conference, when we have other events, to provide some guidance to Richard and team, in terms of what are we looking for, what are business owners looking for, what is going to move the needle, and I think to give some just open and honest feedback on that, that's kind of what we do. So.
Amen. And well said. And I've enjoyed working with you and getting to know you during that time serving on the board for sure. I always like to go back in time. Where did you start from? And I'm actually going to be more specific with you, Bryan, because your business is particularly fascinating because it's not the story where your business started, in the last 5 or 10 years. Mills, and you could correct me around the naming, but I'll just name your current company, Mills Technologies. My notes here have that you guys, or maybe your grandfather, started this back in the 1930s. So take us back in time. I want to learn about the history of the business, but then also your particular experience and life that's led you to running this very successful business today.
Yeah, we are unique in that. And so Mills Recording Systems was founded in 1939 by my grandfather, who was also Ron Mills.
It's a good name.
He was a smart guy, a Quaker from central Illinois, who I think had an entrepreneurial spirit. And so he secured some of the first distribution rights to magnetic recording tape. And some of the early efforts of the company were recording artists to support World War II. I'm sure some of those old timey, like you'd go into the theater and some of those shorts that we've seen and whatnot. But they were a recording studio for kind of the 40s, 50s, 60s. It did some sort of various professional recording and some other things. And then that business kind of evolved. They did that, but you started getting these kind of this hi-fi, these consumer products. And so as the decades kind of went on, they started selling some audio equipment, some video equipment, but we're kind of positioned as that high-end hi-fi store in Chicago. So we had stores on, if people know Chicago, Michigan Avenue and State Street, which are kind of the expensive commerce areas there, and did that for a long time. Built some really great relationships. one of the things we're proud of is if the audience remembers Siskel and Ebert, so they were both Chicago-based movie
I
critics.
grew up watching Siskel and
So,
Ebert,
so
and I
Siskel,
couldn't wait for their reviews of the,
so,
whatever was in
so
the theater.
So both of those guys were great Mills customers. And in fact, if you can recall, when they used to have a holiday show, they'd say, what's new in consumer technology? They would often bring Mills on, and we'd kind of talk about home theater and TVs and that sort of thing. So just some really cool. It was great to be a part of Chicago history and the history of this industry. And so kind of as time progressed, you get into the late '80s and early '90s. And there was a pivot. You had the advent of some of the big box electronic stores, so the Circuit Cities and the Best Buys and that sort of thing, that were really selling on price. And so people would come in and shop us for knowledge, but they'd go buy elsewhere. At the same time, some products started coming along that people just didn't buy, and there was enough complexity there where they'd say, "Hey, come install this in my house." And so we kind of had in the early '90s there two business models: retail, where we were getting killed with high rent and that sort of thing, and then this nascent industry of, I guess what we call today custom integration. And so in '94, the company made the decision to shut down retail operations and focus exclusively on this channel, and we've been doing it since. So yeah, since then.
And when did you start in the business?
Yeah, so I started in 2009. I always joke with anybody who has ever met me. It was the last job that I was ever going to do. And we can go through that story. But
Yeah, actually
basically,
take me through. Not even I jumped the gun here because I want the team to. I want the team. I want the. I'm so used to referencing my team. I want our audience to hear that story, but also actually go back for us to your college. What you studied engineering, and you had a pretty fascinating career even prior to joining the family business.
yeah. So I mean, as I said, even in high school, interned at a product design firm. So I kind of had engineering and product design in the mind. When I went to college, so engineers oftentimes have the option of doing what's called a co-op program, where instead of being a 4-year program, it's a 5-year program. But same number of classes, you just work in industry for a year and a half. And so I co-opted locally at a diversified manufacturing company and spent a year and a half working in their R&D center. So designing products, designing processes, that sort of thing. Ron and I were talking about earlier. One of my claims to fame is I redesigned all Tapcon concrete screws in about 2000.
I can't let that, like, this is a big deal. So like everybody in the world that has used a Tapcon is using a product that the Bryan Mills designed.
Yeah, let's not oversell it. Let's not
This is
oversell
pretty cool. I
it.
I don't
Let's
know.
not.
I think that needs to be the front of your website.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we joked we called them Mills cons a while. We still call them, when we use them here, we call them Mills cons.
I'm
But
now gonna forever be referring to them as Mills cons.
I,
And for
I'm
anyone that's listening that doesn't know what we're talking about, if you ever have to hang something or put a screw into concrete, you can't just use a regular screw. You have to use a Tapcon, which is a brand name of a concrete screw. And I'm here in Florida, so my home's built out of concrete. And so, we use Tapcons. I've got a Leon soundbar Denza thing in my living room, and it's the brackets held onto the wall with Tapcons. There you go. I didn't know, Brian. I didn't know you were in my living room.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure it's been redesigned since then, but it was a great experience. It leveraged, in that particular case, got to leverage, actually use some finite element software to kind of model the whole thing, and then got the very real experience of importing different types of concrete from around the United States, and just sitting out on a summer day drilling thousands of screws into chunks of concrete to solve an engineering problem.
All
So
right, so now we're down this rabbit hole, so we got to keep going. What did you fix on the Tapcon? What was wrong, and what was your solution?
yeah, I'm sure everybody wants to hear this story.
They
The,
totally don't, but I do. So
the, So
educate me.
the real short of it is, there's a natural stress point. The way that you make a screw, there was a natural stress point, and as on concretes kind of got to higher psi's, it was causing them to snap off prematurely. And so we kind of changed the process to where that stress point got moved. And so the story I shared with Ron is we had a large distributor in Florida that had canceled all of our orders because they were snapping off. And so I flew down with the sales team. I think I was 21 at the time, full suit, whatever. We go back into this warehouse in Florida. It's 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And the guy says, "Hey, I've got an order for $10 million here worth of the screws. If you guys can sink 2 screws in the floor, I'll give you the order. If not, I'm canceling the order." And so he told me I had to do it. So in my full suit, I've got this giant hammer drill. I kind of hammer in these 2 screws. They sink, and he goes, "Here goes your order." So the sales team bought me a nice dinner that night down in Florida. So yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so clearly that is a milestone in one's life. But what happened after the tap? So take us further.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed engineering, but I realized I like making decisions. I was tired of having projects that were canceled, and I didn't have a lot of input into them. And so, coming off of school, another diversified manufacturing company, Eaton Corporation, they had a management development program where they took people with engineering backgrounds, but they exposed them to lots of different aspects of business. So every 9 months, I would rotate where I lived, and then I would rotate what job I did. So I worked in on the manufacturing floor and operations in North Carolina, then moved a plant to central Mexico. I did some marketing and new business development where we had literally a hybrid garbage truck that used a hybrid hydraulic platform that we were bringing to market, and so got to write some grants and that sort of thing, and request some grants and market the platform to a bunch of different industries. And then I kind of concluded that with working in the corporate headquarters, in fact, for the guy that's now the CEO of that company, but doing things like just financial reporting, mergers and acquisitions. And actually, some of the best things I did is I made his presentations. You want to learn about business, make the presentations for a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and find out what they think is important. So some really good lessons learned there. And at that time, I got engaged. My wife was getting her PhD at Duke down in North Carolina, so I took a permanent role as a product manager for about a $20 million uninterruptible power supply product line in North Carolina. So did that. As somebody who grew up in a small business, I kind of missed that. And a couple of years in, just through some connections I had, there was a company. It was a franchisor of sporting goods retail stores, and so a totally natural transition to where my next step would be. But really got to talking to the owner. Really liked what they were doing. Loved the idea of going into small business. There were 15 of us in an old converted art house in this kind of funky town in North Carolina, and they were looking to hire somebody from outside their industry to kind of think about operations differently. And I did that. I fundamentally kind of consulted to small business owners around the country. Really fell in love with small business, and then when we started a family, and I was interested in moving back to Chicago, wanted to find a business to run on my own. And said I would never do it, but wanted to find something that leveraged my technical background, something that had cash flow, so that I could actually take a salary. And at the time, my parents were looking to get out of the business here, and so in 2009, I moved here and I took over the family business.
Did you get to work during that transition? Were you able to work with your mom and dad?
Yeah, so my dad, unfortunately, for health reasons, had kind of exited the business a year before. I had worked with him some summers in high school, implementing primarily the inventory management system that 16 years later had become very unwieldy and was one of the first things that I corrected here. And then, but I literally worked with my mom for about 10 years. She retired a couple of years ago, but yeah, no, I would come in and our HR and accounting person was my mom. So
That's amazing. It's got to be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun and maybe very stressful working with your parents.
I think when you work with your mom, you're always on your best behavior because you don't want to be that jerk. So I think it influences you being on your best behavior at all times.
By the way, we have a couple of people on LinkedIn that have stopped in and said hello. Paul Bachner has said hello. He said Bryan, a bunch of exclamation points. And Wes over here at Team One Firefly, he's a leader on our team, and he's welcomed you to the show, which is
Thank you.
appreciate that. So tell me what I just heard. I think I heard, and I'd love you to clarify, is that you designed the inventory management system for the business, but not after you had gone to college. You designed this in high school?
Yeah, let's be clear. It was a glorified Excel sheet with some access, some Microsoft Access database layered on top of it. So, I think when I did it when I was 16, it was a few hundred rows. When I came and take over the business in 2009, it's now at some tens of hundreds of thousands of rows of data and that sort of thing, and was not very clean. So, we eventually got to that, not right away, but eventually got to fixing that. So.
So going back in time, 2009, I have vivid memories of 2009. I started this business in November of '07. So I had about 6 months under my belt before the whole world melted down with, at the time, what was called the Great Recession. And that Great Recession easily impacted our industry for the next, 3 years or so, which puts 2009 right at the epicenter of probably a very scary time. What was that like? I mean, what was that time period like to be entering the family business? A, that sounds very hard, and B, it sounds very stressful, potentially with economic conditions that were going on.
Yeah, I feel extremely fortunate that that's when I entered the business. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but I mean, imagine a 30-year-old kid who's never worked in the business basically saying, "I'm in charge now," right? I mean, it smacks of just of hubris, right? And so I think I say I'm very fortunate. Some of the employees I had known since I was 5 years old. I mean, it's a unique situation in family business. But I feel very fortunate in that we were not in a good position, just to be blunt. I think that made people a lot more willing to say, you know what, I'm not sure who this person is, but let's follow him and see what happens because it can't be any worse. And so I think if I had entered at a time where things were going extremely well, I'm not sure I would have gotten that buy-in. Fortunately, I walked in when things were not going well. We were lucky to get some early victories, and I think that just kind of built the momentum for what was to come.
Anything jump out at you in terms of changes you implemented anywhere across the business in those first, call it, year or two that you think likely impacted your survivability and now your ability to thrive?
Yeah, I think there were two things that still to this day I think are differentiators for our business. The first one is, I kind of looked at it as an outsider and kind of based on that product management background, and I couldn't understand why we lumped everything into installation. And in kind of my going theory at the time was, to me it feels like the differentiators in this industry should be design and support. Like a lot of people are really good at installation, but really the user experience is made in the design side. And when I say design, not design documents, but really voice of the customer, listening to what they want and designing a system that's going to meet their needs. And then support. I mean, we did not have a support business. We had an apology business. I'm sorry that the system that we designed or installed 5 years ago doesn't work perfectly, right? And I yeah, I don't know how it was for the rest of the industry, but that felt weird because it's technology. You have to embrace that it's going to fall apart sometimes. So I think splitting those things out and having conversations around that. A lot of we targeted architects, I think, because I had that background in form and function and felt more comfortable speaking that language. So I think that's where some of our early victories were there. The other thing that I kind of had taken away from previous industries is that every industry has one North Star financial metric. So when I was at a diversified manufacturer, you can imagine you're spending all this money on these giant machines and you have to worry about inventory and that sort of thing. So their number was like cash flow based on invested capital, right? That's if you're a diversified manufacturer, that's what you worry about. When I was in retail, your biggest numbers is typically your rent. It's your price per square foot. And so how much revenue you can generate per square foot, that often dictates your profitability. So, when I looked at this industry, I said, well, what's really that driver? And the one that we arrived at was, really gross profit, which is that's kind of your variable. And when you look at a proposal, how much gross profit am I going to make dollar wise? And then what's our limiting factor? And for us, that was, it's our ability to hire, train, and retain great technicians. And so really our limiting factor is installation techs and their hours. And so very early on, we started looking at everything through the lens of gross profit per technician hour. And we made decisions on which projects to go after based on that, and really maintaining a portfolio. And that served us well. I think, you don't necessarily have to crank a lot of revenue if you're making sure that everything that you're doing is profitable, and in terms of opportunity cost as well. So, do I do this job that's $185 an hour in gross profit per hour versus this one that's 120? You start making informed decisions.
I, do you have numbers or recommendations or targets that are, you just mentioned gross profit per technician? Are those, is that on your dashboard with your leadership team? Is that a top line metric that you're always looking at?
Yeah. So, in the last year, up until about 18 months ago, I was the only salesperson here, or at least have been for a few years. We've built out now a sales team to three of us. And in fact, I'm kind of stepping away a little bit from doing that. One of the things you have to realize is you've got to set standards on how other people sell. And so that's kind of, that's hammered into our sales team. I mean, overall our team, but our sales team, they know what that number needs to be. It's hard to say. It depends on your business a little bit, right? So it's hard to say exactly because it's based on what are your fixed costs and
Has to
that
do with
sort of
how you
thing.
build out your P&L, right? In order for
It
that
is. It
number
is.
to fully make
What's
sense.
interesting about it though is it doesn't become then just one number. I think you can start to think about it in terms of risk. So okay, let's say our number is $150 of gross profit per hour, which is approximately what it is for us. But not all jobs are the same. There's a lot higher risk if I've got 1,000 hours on a project and it's in a high rise that takes a long time to get into. It's a builder I've never worked with before. There's a risk there. And so I may say for that job, I'm not $150 an hour is not sufficient. That job's got to be at $180 an hour to mitigate risk. Whereas you may have something that, hey, we've worked with this person a ton of time before, existing client, everything's a known, it's under our control. Yeah, if it's a competitive situation, maybe we're willing to do it for a little bit less. So it leads into some really interesting conversations too. I think this industry is like, oh, we don't discount. Well, what is discounting? I mean, we have products that we make no margin on, and we have products that we make very large margin on. But it gets into are we better off selling a $500 pair of speakers at 50 points of margin or a $1,000 pair of speakers at 40 points of margin? Which one makes us more money? Which creates a better client experience? And so it's led us to some business strategies and that sort of thing that maybe not be for everybody, but have worked for us.
It sounds like you have a strong handle on your business finances. Have you always, since you took over the business, played that role? Or is there a counter? Is there a member of your team that is, their job is to make sure the I don't want to say just a bookkeeper role, but the more strategic direction of financial management.
Yeah,
How have you always approached that?
yeah. I'd be lying if I said our books have always been awesome. They were very bad for a very long time,
Yeah.
and it's a regret that I have because it's really hard to make decisions without that information, and not just having that information accurate, having that information timely, right? I mean, I think without getting too far into it, one of the real challenges of this industry is how long our projects are. So it gets into the question: when do you recognize revenue? Do you recognize revenue on a piece of equipment when you sell it, when you order it, when you install it, when the project's all done? And so those, for those of us in the industry, big projects can create really big swings in profitability on a monthly or even quarterly basis. So back to your question, I've always kind of looked at it strategically. We have the way that we're structured. We have a person in charge of internal operations, and she, with an outside bookkeeper, kind of maintains that. Finally, in the last 2 years, we've had it to the point where I'm satisfied with it, and we're actually using it more strategically than we have in the past.
I want to go really granular with this question. It's actually based on a conversation I was having, oh, really over the last week with a couple of different folks. But it has to do with in some markets across North America, this could be happening around the world as well. The conversations I've recently had are here in North America, US and Canada. And it has to do with in some markets, some of these middle size projects, middle market projects, even smaller projects have been eroding or slowing down. And what's nice about those projects is they're often great for cash flow. You can get in and get out of a job in 60 days, 90 days, maybe sometimes in a couple of weeks, which is great because it helps you pay the bills. You got to, you pay your mortgage or you pay your people with cash. And at the same time, I'm seeing or they're seeing what appears to be an increase in larger projects, right? And what triggered this thought is your comment about understanding kind of the way money's moving through the business. And a big project can look like a vanity metric of success. Wow, I scored a $500,000 job, or I scored $1 million job, whatever that is. But $1 million job could be spread, that revenue could be spread over 3 years. Whereas, so if your small to medium job has eroded and there's less of them, and you're now scoring more big jobs, that's I mean, is it, so this was a long setup. Is that not a completely different business to run than maybe the business you were running previous to that? That's just a high level meta question. And then I'm curious what you're seeing, or like, it's a lot of people tune into this show. Like what's happening in Chicago? What's happening in LA? Like, what are people in different markets seeing and hearing?
Yeah, a lot of questions to unpack there. So I think if I had two wishes for this industry, one of them would be we need to shift from a project mentality to a relationship mentality. I think that, and we're seeing this, right? And we kind of had this thesis a few years ago, and I think COVID really proved it right. But like, we got to stop thinking about our involvement is only when projects happen, because the downside of projects is you've got to, the opportunity has to exist. There has to be a hole in the ground, right? There has to be the right alignment of that builder or that architect or that client, kind of choosing you and that sort of thing. There's a lot of challenges and risk involved with that. We made the decision to invest kind of more heavily on the service side of our business starting about 5 years ago. So we're on the One Vision platform. They've been a great help in getting us to think about it differently. But one of the things that we've seen, and part of this speaks to the age of our company as well. We have clients that go back 10, 15, 25 years. How do you serve that client who just wants to do a $15,000 upgrade of something? Like, I mean, we all saw it during COVID, but the 10, 15, $20,000 network upgrade, right? I want some new TVs. I want to do outdoor and that sort of thing. So one of the trends that we've seen in our company over the last 4 years is our average project size has gone down significantly. The number of projects has gone up significantly, but we really haven't changed our clientele a lot. It's just how we do business with them. It's that, we are doing okay, this year we're going to do the $10,000, whatever it is. And next year we're going to do the $40,000, whatever it is. And so just a lot more touch points with a client. So I have heard what you said of the middle's gone. We have a hard time distinguishing that because we do so much of our business with existing customers. The other thing, so if we look exclusively though at new construction, Chicago's an interesting market. We Midwesterners tend to be humble and not a lot showy. So literally the same client that I'll do a home with here as their primary residence may have a very different spending pattern than their home in Miami or Aspen or, that sort of thing. So I don't think we have seen that trend of it's the extremes, but we're a little bit different business from that standpoint.
What, out of curiosity, if you're willing to share it, when you think about, and we'll just say high level, and I don't need exact numbers, but more of percentages or ideas. If you look at your revenue forecast for next year within your business, because your legacy goes back to the 1930s, what percentage of revenue do you expect to come from that existing book of customers versus new customers?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's over 50%.
Over 50%. And
Yeah.
is that trend, is it changing or has it been 50% for a long time?
I think it's probably percentage wise the same, dollar wise, it keeps going up. So as our, we're going to finish this year about 17% up. Next year, we're targeting another 15 to 20% up, despite the economic conditions. So just the dollars are getting bigger. But as a percent, it's probably comparable. It probably went up a little bit from where it was, but yeah, I think that's a good ballpark.
Well, I think you're espousing a really powerful point here, and that is the power of your customer base and properly staying connected to that customer base. And it sounds like through um, great service, keeping their positive energy and positive thoughts about their technology in line so that they, in fact, sounds like become a customer for life.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the other part of that is, I mean, it's interesting. I think for a long time, having a large customer base in this industry was an anchor. It was a negative, not a positive, right? And this goes to, I think generally our industry did not know how to sell labor, right? The dirty secret of this industry is we don't survive without selling boxes. And it leads to some it leads clients to oftentimes come to us saying, you know what, I had this great integrator. They were so great during the project, but now we're 2 years out and I call them and they don't really respond. And I don't get it. And I said, I get it. They're not making as much money. I mean, a couple things. One, your organizational structure has to be significantly different to be respond to those to service than it is for big projects, right? But then secondly, I mean, if you really look at it back to that gross profit per hour, if I'm making $200 in gross profit, on the sale of a pair of speakers in that hour, and now you're asking me to take that same technician and just sell labor. I mean, what is that number? And so I don't know if anybody's going to be selling $400. Some people will, but a lot of people are not going to be selling service labor at $400 an hour.
right.
But then what are some different, methods that we have to at least make that profitable? And so I think one of the things that we've done in the last 5 years is really leaned into that of like, yeah, it's really difficult to be good at service, and you want us to be profitable at it, because if we're profitable at it, we pay attention to it. And so, one of the things that we do is we do sell service memberships that basically just dictate the terms of how responsive we are, whether that's remote, in person, if we're proactively monitoring equipment. And we have 150 clients. I never thought we'd get to this level. We have 150 clients that pay us monthly, for some, advanced form of response from our service team. And that's great because that helps then keep, by those having that monthly revenue, it helps us keep the proper team staff, but it also means that our hourly costs can be a little bit lower than it would otherwise.
That's awesome. Do you mind sharing, like, how'd you get to, how long did it take you to get to 150 and kind of how you think about that or how you approach that?
Yeah, like a lot of things, it was not linear. And one of the other things I think I learned from it is we were certainly victims of our own small thinking, And so when we started it, and this was partnering with One Vision, who was a great partner in terms of coaching us and getting us to think, to make a cultural shift in terms of how we thought about support and ongoing client relationships. But I thought we'd get to 30. I'd say like, all right, I know that these are the 20 or 30 people that call me a lot. Really, my goal is to get these 20 or 30 people not to have to bother me after hours, and so that I can have better work-life balance and my technicians can have better work-life balance. And it sort of was a self-fulfilling prophecy. We were there for the first, I don't know what it was, 12, 18 months or whatever. And then, we had somebody come in and we kind of rallied behind it saying, you know what? We're having all these other people come to us and saying, I'm not happy with the level of service I'm getting from companies like you. Their value, I hear you've got something different. And so we started building. And then we made another big push and we got to about 75 and then we plateaued. And then I think to get to 150, we really started selling it as part of our sales process. So one of the first conversations we're going to have if you're a new client of us is how we go about support, what the different options are, and why it's a better experience. And so now you're beginning to see with every, not every project sold, but with a good number of projects sold, people are also buying into the membership before we run the first wire.
What would you say, Bryan, to anyone listening or watching that isn't paying a great deal of attention to the service of their clients or the service department? Maybe doesn't even have a service department.
Um, it's hard, right? I mean, it's like we tried for a number of years on our own to do it and we failed. I think one of the biggest things is you've got to be very, very simple in what you're offering. We had these ideas of we'll bundle this many hours of labor and we'll give this many discounts on future. Like it was all too complex, and so the model that worked for us, which is the one vision model, which is, it's going to dictate the terms of our responsiveness. I mean, there's a few other things in there as well, but that's basically what you're paying for is, and for us, it's great because there's no ambiguity. Just because I have a cell phone, doesn't mean I'm not gonna answer it. We have a process now for it. And I think that was a huge thing for us. I think the only time I was ever ready to like kind of throw up my hands and leave the industry was just the stress that was caused with clients reaching out after hours in particular. And the amazing thing about that is I don't even think it's so much that clients were angry. It just they experience it residentially. They experience our systems, or I should say, we work between 8 and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. They use our systems not 8 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so it was just top of mind. Hey, I'm home right now. It's Wednesday night. I see this isn't working. And, one of the things that just amazes me about this industry from top to bottom, people care. Like if there was one thing I could tell a consumer is you have no idea how much every single person at your integration firm cares. And so even if they were saying no big deal, you get it in your head, it's 8 o'clock at night. You're like, oh, I wonder why that's not working. Maybe if we, and it just festers, and so I think to give our technicians a break, to give ourselves a break, we just, when you're off, you're off. And when you're on call, you're on call. And it's such a better work-life balance.
Brilliant. Bryan, you also practice EOS traction. And I've talked about that on multiple occasions on this show. We practice EOS traction. Why don't you share kind of how you guys practice it or how it's maybe positively or negatively, but affected your business?
Yeah, so I've been accused of, kind of being in the EOS cult. But
I'm in the
EOS is,
cult too, so it's okay.
yeah, for those not on it, EOS has been the best thing for our business that we've done in the last 3 years, 5 years, probably, maybe ever.
Yeah.
And it really is like, does your business have an operating system? Right. And if we think about it, like everything we do, I mean, we're in technology, everything has an operating system. Our business did not have an operating system. And so, and when we say that, how are meetings run? How are, measurables, reported? How is the team organized? How do you give feedback? That sort of thing. And, being on the journey. So we just concluded year 2 weeks ago. We had an annual session. So for those who do EOS, the year concludes with a 2-day deep dive where you kind of look at what has been done, but then also like, all right, let's revisit what is our 10-year goal, our 5-year goal, our 1-year goal, and then how is our organization aligned with that? It creates some really good discussion. I think as a bigger part of that, it has transformed our culture. We all mean well, and somebody, a technician might come to me and say like, hey, I've got this idea for a thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then I get busy and then I don't respond to it. And then the next time they have an idea, the technician is going to be like, he didn't listen the last time. Why am I going to do it again? One of the results of EOS is everybody has a weekly meeting. Those issues, those ideas, all those things get moved up and down the organization in a proper manner so they get responded to. And it's just the level of engagement is so much better because of it.
Why do you think that is?
People are heard. I mean, they've got a voice, they've got a platform. And they also, I think it's also, where do I fit in the organization? So if our goal next year is 20% growth and X amount of profitability, what is my role in getting there? Oh, so I'm a technician. I understand, that my role in that is going to be utilization. I was clocking in about 6 billable hours a day. My stretch is to find a way to get that to 6.5. And that little action is going to yield another $100,000 of gross profit. And oh, by the way, we have an incentive plan now where I get a piece of that too.
Mhm.
So things that used to take us months, years, some things we'd never get to, we're able to knock out. And we're also able to, as part of that, a lot of it is saying no. This is not a priority right now. I would love to do this sort of thing, but in the next 90 days, it's not a priority. We're not going to think about it. We're not going to waste mental energy on it. So I think those have been really big things.
People listening go, this sounds all right. He's a member of a cult. This sounds too good to be true. All right. How does someone that's not doing this, has not read the book Traction, has not read the book What the Heck is EOS, has not read Rocket Fuel, has not read any of this content? What's maybe in straightforward language? What is it like to come on board with EOS? Like, what is that onboarding process?
Yeah, and EOS has changed, right? So it's kind of become the franchise model on its own. So you can self-implement. You can read. I mean, all the tools are out there. You can read Traction. You can read any of the books that Ron just mentioned. There's a lot of resources out there on the web, and you can try to self-implement. In our experience and the experience of anybody I've ever talked to, you're not going to be successful. And it's kind of the same thing of I could go to the gym and I could get myself in shape, but the reality is if I hire a personal trainer, I've got accountability.
Mhm.
And so we hired an implementer, um, and they were really our guide for the 2 years on this process where they would work with us quarterly. So you have kind of quarterly, you've got an initial onboarding, you've got quarterly check-ins, you've got an annual. The individual is fantastic at doing it. Justin Cook has just been such an awesome person to work with on this. Um, it's expensive, and in EOS rates, from what I hear, have gone up significantly from when we started. So I'm glad we got in when we did. It's still worth it. It's going to be a big investment, but for us, I'd say even at some of those rates, it's absolutely worth it. And so now we're at a point where 2 years on, we're basically doing it ourselves. We're still going to bring in our implementer on an annual basis, but otherwise, we're now running it ourselves.
You mentioned right when you were starting to talk about EOS, it's changed how you run meetings. What does it mean to run an effective meeting?
Yeah. So, and if anybody's ever read books by I can't think of his first name, Lencioni. There's
Patrick
a
Lencioni.
Patrick Lencioni. Thank you. He's got a couple. He writes in business fables, which I love. It's like a narrative, but it has all your business things built in. So. The five dysfunctions is probably the most common one, which is a great one. There's another one called death by meeting, and so we all hate meetings because, and I ran them this way forever. A meeting was okay. Let's go through our 40 open projects. Number one, how is it? Number two, how is it? And so not to steal the book by Lencioni, but like in it, basically the character finds out that like why meetings are the same length as movies. Why do we love movies? Well, movies have conflict. There's tension. And so the whole idea with an EOS meeting is yes, there's some check-in and that sort of thing, but the majority of the meeting is what's called IDS: identify, discuss, and solve. Here's our issues. Let's have at it. Nothing is sacred. We can totally throw it. We're comfortable enough with each other to speak our mind. And at the end of the day, we come to resolution and we're all in agreement on it. So rather than meetings being a reporting function, they're actually a workshop discussion function where you're solving issues and you're moving on. And they're just more fun. So yeah, that's been, it's hard to have everyone like that. But it's made them a lot more. There's a lot more engagement.
And in EOS nomenclature, that's called an L10 meeting. And the reason they want it called an L10 is in a perfect world, every single member in that meeting would rate it a 10 out of 10 in terms of effectiveness. And for anyone watching or listening that, just try it out in your next meeting. Have a normal meeting, as good or as dysfunctional as it might be, and then ask everyone to rate that meeting 1 to 10. 10, this was highly effective, and 1, it was a waste of my time, and see what you come out with. And when just that idea that accountability is built into the name of the type of meetings you run in EOS, it immediately forces you, me, everybody attending that meeting to make sure it's an effective meeting. I'd rather have less meetings that are more effective than more meetings that are less effective. I think everyone would raise their hand to that. That's awesome. You mentioned Justin Cook. Was that your EOS implementer? Is this someone that is soliciting other clients, or is
Yeah,
there
no,
a website or a shout out you want to give to that individual?
yeah, I mean, so Justin's great. You know, Justin comes from our industry. He was actually a team member at One Vision for a while. What I love about Justin is, there are different takes on should an implementer have industry experience, and there's arguments either way. Justin is really largely not taking people from our industry because he feels that interferes with him being kind of pure in the EOS implementation. They are there not to give advice, they're there to facilitate, right? So but certainly I think EOS worldwide is the website. That being said, if somebody wanted to reach out to me, I'm happy to put like there's kind of back channels too of, hey, who's a good implementer and that sort of thing. So more than happy to put you in touch. We've done that for a few other integrators. I gave them Justin's name. Justin was able to find a person in their market.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in the category, and Bryan, you mentioned there's a category where you have an implementer or a coach of sorts, and then you kind of you have the opportunity to self implement beyond that. I'm in the camp at One Firefly where we just appreciate the luxury of that moderator on an ongoing basis. So we certainly feel that we can generally run those meetings, but I appreciate as a CEO and founder having a third party facilitating the dialogue of which then I'm a participant. So there's just different ways to go about, getting the mission accomplished. And those are two immediate examples. To pivot to one, I'm just mindful of time. We're almost at the hour. I just have one more thing I wanted to dig into. I know that Bryan, you and team have focused on building relationships with architects and designers, and that's an important part of your go to business strategy. Can you just share how you think about that?
Yeah, I think this goes back to, something I said earlier. My background is product design, that marriage of form and function. I feel comfortable doing that. And so, very early on, I got my CEDIA ROI, COI certification. And a big part of our marketing strategy is lunch and learns of reaching out to the design community. We tend to be architect heavy, and just establishing ourselves as a knowledge leader. It's we talk about our company having kind of four pillars. So I had mentioned, our design, our installation, and support. The other one that isn't a revenue center is education. And one of the things that's really challenging is people don't really know that our industry exists or what we do. And so we're big proponents of reaching out to architects, reaching out to the design community, and speaking on it. Personally, I've been fortunate. I've had the chance to speak through the AIA, American Institute of Architects, a few times. So both locally, there's different chapters of AIA, and so the one that's relevant kind of to our industry is something called CRAN, which is the Custom Residential Architects Network. So if you have a CRAN chapter, I'd reach out to them and find out how to get involved. In 2018, I actually had the good fortune to be able to speak at the CRAN National Conference. So it was in Cincinnati, a really cool event. Got to hang out with 250 architects and tour some significant homes and that sort of thing. But I got to speak on basically how architects can build better relationships with integrators, and kind of what's a blueprint for that. So in fact, I think that course is still on AIA's e-learning website and that sort of thing. But just the idea of bringing us in early, is something that's spoken to a lot. But and why that's better, what that can yield, why that's a better relationship, and really how to find people like us.
I am sharing your website for all of us that are watching on the socials, and that website is mills-technologies.com. Um, Bryan, it's been awesome having you on show 230. Let me make sure I get the number right. I think it's 232. I'll have David come over here and correct me if it's not 232. But it's been awesome having you on the show. How else could people that would like to get in touch with you? How else would you recommend they do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the website. You can find me on LinkedIn, and my email address is Bryan, Bryan, the letter M, at mills-technologies.com. Always up for a good conversation about, my love is small business. Always love talking to other business owners and manufacturers and that sort of thing. So
Awesome. Bryan, happy holidays, sir. And I look forward to seeing you in person at the next As He Owned conference. And I'm sure we'll have opportunities to talk sooner than that. Maybe I'm heading out to Phoenix for the Palooza conference in February. So maybe we'll have an opportunity to run into each other there.
I hope to see you there, and happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you, buddy. Be well. So, folks, there you have it. The one and only Bryan Mills. I mean, just awesome legacy. His grandfather started the business, and I think he said it transitioned to his grandmother, and then his dad, and then his mom, and now he's running the business. And it's always fun for me to obviously talk to business owners, but to talk to a fellow engineer and I can kind of see how some of those gears are working when he's talking about the approach he takes to business. And I always, enjoy talking to Bryan. He's a smart guy, and I'm sure everyone tuning in could tell that. So we will. What do we have? We have Christmas this weekend. And right now it's Hanukkah for all of our friends and listeners that are observers of Hanukkah. And I want to say I think we have a show next Wednesday, so just stay tuned. And lots of exciting guests scheduled in the coming weeks. I want to say we're nicely booked through February with guests, so definitely continue to tune in and know that I appreciate all of you. And I wish you a Merry Christmas. So, on that note, I'm going to sign off. Have a wonderful close to your week. Hopefully, maybe you're already off or maybe getting ready to take some time off and spend it with friends and family. So, on that note, be